camera right ahead of me. Okay. Good morning, online audience and live audience. I'm glad students could be here. This is our second annual Deaf Pioneers Day, and we're abbreviating it DPD. In the past, we had a theme last year. Who came last year for Deaf Pioneer Day? Some of the students seem to still be sleepy. Maybe we should get some coffee. What did we do for Deaf Pioneers Day last time? So our last time, the theme was NASA and rockets. And this year, we're talking about your future with computers. So I know there's different signs for computer. Some people sign it like this, or this,
or PC.
like this. So we're talking about your future with computers, however you may sign it. So it's a big topic. And I look forward to seeing our panelists and what they have to say. They work in the STEM field in different professions and have various experiences, and hopefully it's going to be inspirational for you and our online viewers. So I'd like to recognize the sponsors for this year that have made this event happen and welcome our sponsors. Deaf Tech, TEC, ERCOD, Educational Resource Center on Deafness. NSF is National Science Foundation, and RIT, NTID. And I forgot to introduce myself. I am Alex Abenchuchin, and I am the host for the Daily Moth. It's a news broadcast for the deaf community, and I'm honored to be here with you today. So, speaking about the STEM field, can you tell me what STEM stands for? The S is science. What's the T? Technology. E is engineering. M is math. Right. So STEM. Growing up, I grew up in Florida, and I went to Florida School for the Deaf and Blind. I grew up there, and I always looked up to my role models who worked in the STEM field. It was about a 2-hour drive south to the Kennedy Space Center, where they launched the rockets. NASA did launches from that site back in my time. They had the space shuttles. That's been closed now, but I remember seeing the launches, and I never got to get up close, but from my home, I could still see that rocket about the size of a pin going up in the air, and realizing how inspirational that was, that humans could create a technology that was capable of going into space. Wow, that was always just chilling to me, how exciting that could be. And in high school, so I graduated in 2004, and so that meant like 1998, year 2000, that's when smartphone technology started to emerge. And I remember my first device, it was the Wendell, the Wintel that became the Sidekick. You remember that phone? And then after that, later came the iPhone and having the touchscreen technology. That really made communication a lot easier for deaf people, being able to text. Everyone has iPhones now. And all of that emerged from the field of STEM. So growing up, I would meet some deaf employees at NASA. No, that wasn't my experience. I didn't have the opportunity to meet somebody who developed apps or worked in technology. I didn't have the experience of having these deaf role models. But in coming here last year to this presentation and meeting people who worked for NASA who were deaf, or seeing people in the computer profession that are deaf, you're having that experience. So I think you're very fortunate to have this opportunity to meet these people, speak with them, have a conversation with them, and maybe what they say could affect your future, and maybe you would start thinking about considering a technology career. A little bit of history. The U.S. Department of Education, they say only 16% of high school students that are interested in the STEM field have proficiency in math. Only 16%. So I want to ask you, are you motivated to pursue a career in STEM? It seems to me, some of you maybe 30% or higher, you feel like is your proficiency. So I want to see all of you have your hand raised after this presentation. I think that's the panelist's job to convince you, right? So a lot of people don't recognize the importance of STEM. So high school freshmen often comment that they might be interested in doing something related to STEM. And then after they graduate high school, for one reason or another, their interests change. And so there's still a high percentage of students who show interest and then lack interest later on. Maybe they think it's too hard, or they choose another profession. And we realize there is a need, 8 million STEM jobs, and there's not enough people to fill those positions. So there is a very great need. And they're typically high-paying jobs. So this is a good opportunity, something you can think about as a career for your future. There is a President Eisenhower said with the NASA jobs, and then at the Kennedy Space Center, they kept promoting these STEM jobs, and then they were finally able to land humans on the moon. So in the 70s and 80s, we saw STEM jobs increasing in the United States. And in the 80s, we started to see the first cell phones. Remember the large devices? And then after that, personal computers that were small enough to fit on a desk. In 1990, that was the first time that STEM, that terminology was used. And President Obama, he talked about the educate to innovate. Educate to innovate initiative. That was federal funds. And he wanted to prepare 100,000 new STEM teachers by the year 2021. That was the initiative. And there was different phases. But America would start focusing on STEM technology and would increase more technological advancements and robotics careers for the future. So start thinking about the history of STEM and then your future related to computers. Different opportunities or interests and also challenges, but it's important that it can make a big impact on the world and on the deaf community as well. So now we have our presenters, the panelists. Are you excited to see these presenters? Can we have some applause, some enthusiasm? Our first presenter is Joe Ben-Pong, and she works with Texas Instruments. Come on up.
Hi, welcome everyone. I am so honored to be here today. I get to share my life and my experience and my journey to become a deaf engineer. Again, my name is Joe Ben-Pong. I'm a software engineer, and I work for a company called Texas Instruments, and we call that TI, and that's in Dallas. Before I delve into the story about my life and my experience, I want to talk about my parents' experience and their background. This is not my dad, but his name is Andrew Foster. Here's his sign name. He was a Gallaudet student, and he was on a missionary trip. He decided to go to Africa, and this was in the 50s. He set up some deaf schools, and the first deaf school was set up in Ghana. That's in West Africa, and that's where my parents are from. My dad was about 8 or 10 years old, and he met this man and was so inspired because he was deaf and black and from America and successful. And he thought, I want to move to America and be like that. My dad met my mom at the deaf school, and they both thought about wanting children, and they thought it'd be best to move to America because America had better education and they could improve their lives. So they decided to move to Dallas, Texas, and they set down roots and had 4 children. There's my twin sister and me, my older brother, and my older sister. We're all deaf. So that's a bit about my background. Now I want to talk about my education. My parents always emphasized the importance of education. The education in Africa was just so-so. So we wanted to move to America, and they wanted us to take advantage of that. They believed that a good education meant a good future. My oldest sister, I always comment about her because she was so inspiring to me. In high school, she went to a mainstream school, and her senior class had deaf and hearing students, about 300. Oops, sorry. No, you're good. Excuse me. So at the top of the class, she got up on graduation day and made a speech about her life and her experiences. She worked hard, and people really recognized it. There were articles written about her, and that really impacted me. I realized it didn't matter if I was deaf or hearing. Deaf people can, and hearing people can. We were the same. And technology has really impacted me as well. My sister graduating at the high school, as a top of her class in high school, and she got a computer. And the whole family just gathered around and was like, what is this? And at the time, we really didn't know. And my sister showed me everything. And I really was able to get into it and get the family to use the computer. But I wanted to just sit there all day. I wanted to do stories and pictures and slides and use PowerPoint and Acrobat and all of that. It was just awesome. I don't know if you guys know MySpace. Do you know what that is? Some of you say yes. Some of you maybe don't know because Facebook is around. MySpace is an older version. And we signed up for MySpace, just like people did for Facebook, and you could communicate with friends and share pictures and all of that. And I realized that my profile was boring. You could put a picture up, and you had a friend list, and you could post some news and that kind of thing, but it was just kind of boring. I wanted to figure out how to make it better. So I went on Google, and I found different templates. And I thought, okay, I like that, and I put it on my MySpace page. And then I did it again and again. But I realized I wanted something different and something new that really reflected who I was. So I found a template, and I put it on there. And I realized that, it's not English. It was a computer language. So if you wanted pictures, you had to do the size, the color, the text, everything. And I really struggled in the beginning, and then I picked up a language called HTML and CSS. And I went from there. Of course, MySpace didn't continue. Facebook took over, and we switched to Facebook. With Facebook, you can do backgrounds and colors, but it was not as fancy as we wanted it to be. It had to be less. So that was throughout high school. I got to college. I was really busy. I was taking advanced classes. I was in tennis. There was after-school robotics programs or with working with computers, but I forgot about coding. And then my senior year in high school, I was thinking about my future and my career, and I was looking at different colleges and majors, and I was thinking about my experience with MySpace. And I thought, maybe I could do coding. And I saw that there was something related to computer science, and I applied to the University of Texas at Arlington. So after about a year, I realized that the computer science was not really challenging for me anymore. There was a small deaf community there, didn't have much of a social life. And I remembered hearing about RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology in New York. So I went ahead and applied. I got accepted, I transferred, and I changed my major. I went for computer engineering because it had both coding and doing cool work with hardware. So I could do both of those things. And of course, the deaf community is huge there because NTID, the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, is there. And people are there for a technical education. And it was so cool. My social life got so much better. There were a lot of internships. You're required to go to internships before you graduate. There were 4 internships, one in New York, one in Florida, one in California, and one in Texas. The internships really helped me. I was able to really see my future, what I wanted to do, and what it would look like. I really have to thank RIT because they helped me really figure out who I was. I'm a leader. I enjoy leading groups of people on projects. I really like to research. I did some deaf community research. I did presentations and traveled for that. I got lots of things as an engineer that I needed to do. So for my master's projects, I really focused on devices, figuring out how to translate English. There were lots of different concepts that I had to test, but those projects really helped me to figure out what skills I had. And RIT really helped me to make my bucket list, really what I wanted to do. I wanted to set up a business one day for the deaf community to help them improve their use of technology. So when I graduated in 2018, I had a bachelor's and a master's in computer engineering. My College of Engineering chose me to get up on the stage and present to over 1,000 students about my life, my experience, and my journey. And I felt the same as my older sister had when she did the same thing. My last internship was with Texas Instrument in Dallas, and they gave me an offer for a job, and I accepted it. I was thrilled. I work with firmware. I'm a firmware engineer, and I develop code for different devices. So they use power for laptops, phones, iPads, electric scooters, all of those things. The program languages I know are many. I have a list. So that list is diverse. And I'm not perfectly proficient in all of them, but I do have an understanding, and they are in my toolbox. So I can put all these in my toolbox, and when I go to work, I have to figure out when a problem comes up, which tool I'm going to use. I have to figure out which language is best to solve the problem, and then apply that language and solve the problem. Before I finish, I just want to throw out a little bit of advice for you all. It's sad today that lots of people see deaf people and say, no, you can't do that. I remember hearing that all the time throughout my life. But I wouldn't accept it. Prove that deaf people can. We're the same as hearing people and what we can do. Continue learning, never stop. If you don't know how, learn. And challenge yourself. Anytime a problem comes up, take a good look at it. Don't feel like, I gotta avoid or I gotta give up. Just do it. Be extraordinary. Set big dreams. Be creative. Be inspired. Try to do new things. Get involved. That's really important. I notice a lot of people in my field, the STEM field, they're often isolated. They don't have a social life. They just focus on school or work. But you have to have a balance between school, work, your life, volunteer, whatever it is you do. Just do things that you enjoy in your life as well. If you're curious about something, go do it. Don't just say, nah, I won't go explore that. Go experiment. Find the answer in the things that you're curious about. So in summary, I have this simple line of code for you. Anytime you feel frustrated in life and you think you're failing and you want to give up, just continue and you'll be successful. Thank you.
Can we get a round of applause for Joe? That was a great presentation. Thank you so much, Joe. It's inspiring to see her journey, her parents coming here from another country, her family, how involved they are with one another, and then finding her way to college and then being successful in her career at Texas Instruments. Thank you for sharing that. Our next presenter is Mark Davis. He is from Rochester, New York, and he works at a facility at NTID RID, and he works on precision manufacturing technology. Mark, come on up.
Hi. It's good to be here. You know, talking about MySpace. Boy, I'm feeling old, thanks. My name is Mark Davis, and I'm staff at the Rochester Institute of Technology. And I teach at the NTID, Department of Engineering Studies. I teach machine shop. I have 2 degrees. I graduated with an associate's degree, AOS. You know, back in the day, it was computer integrated machine, right? And now that's been changed to PMT, Precision Manufacturing Technology. Now, you see on the slide here, that's who I am. I come from a hearing family. I'm the only deaf person. I was born in Iowa, again, and I became deaf when I was 2 years old. I had spinal meningitis, and that's how I became deaf. And there were not a lot of deaf people where I lived. There might have been 10 of us. You know, I didn't have anybody deaf that was my age. I spent all my time with hearing people until I got to high school. And there were a few people that I could hang out with. Now, growing up, I was in sports, right? Interacting with people was difficult. Being able to express myself was difficult. But sports, that was where I excelled. That was my path. That was how I communicated. So, yeah, my communication was limited based on my interaction with deaf or hearing people and how they looked at me. And that's just how I lived. But that's not the way it should have been. So I got 14 years of work with machining in this industry. And, you know, as a deaf person, as a machinist, you know, are people required to hear to be a machinist? Well, I proved that that's not the case. You know, regardless of who it is that's thinking that, hearing people or hearing deaf people that think like hearing people. But anyway, I'm unable to hear, and for 14 years I worked in the industry and done a lot of things to become who I am today as a deaf machinist. Now, some of the things that I've made, look up here, you see. I'm going to show you some of the things here on the table. When I was growing up as a deaf person, you know, I got lucky in high school. I had an interpreter, but I didn't really pay attention. I didn't know a lot of sign when I was in high school. I knew some home signs, and I had some friends that we just kind of made up our own signs, and, didn't really have a whole lot of language. My first language was English. It wasn't ASL. And then communicating with people, that was a problem. I couldn't really speak with them. I'd end up lip reading all the way, and I got pretty good at it. I think that that's part of what made me successful. Especially out in the hearing world. Lip reading has helped me. It's really kind of paved my way. I was never comfortable expressing myself. You think of oppression from hearing people. And that continued until, well, I guess high school, during my high school time, kind of like the same age as you guys here in the audience. I think of language barriers. I started to step up and speak for myself in high school. I didn't have the support services I needed, like access to community college or high school or, things, activities for after school, right? I just had sports. Didn't have an interpreter. Well, that's why I decided to do something about it. I looked and looked, and, my attitude was, good enough, go to the community college, right? Let's get started there. They had an interpreter there, but, it just really wasn't a good fit for me. They may show up. They were unable to help me. I'd had to have one-on-one time, and I'm just saying that didn't help me a whole lot, so I continued my search. And I really couldn't find a local college, right? I wanted to stay local. And my parents were looking at me like, wow, look how good he is with math. I'd get A's, maybe a B. But at the community college, man, I got C's. And my parents were looking at that like, hey, a C? And I'm like, I don't know. Did you try? I'm like, well, I guess I tried. So this went on for a bit, and I realized, man, I'm struggling. I told my parents, I'm like, hey, I want to go to NTID, I want to go to RIT. So we looked at that. It really, I needed to make a proposal to my parents for me to be able to go there. And my parents, I typed this thing up, my parents looked at it, and they said, well, okay. So I flew to NTID, and I'm telling you, culture shock. It was for me. And, like I said, I didn't know much sign language when I got there. And it was absolutely shocking for me. And I just fell in love with the place, learning ASL. I picked up other languages as well. I met a lot of people. And, that made me kind of open up and give my heart to NTID, right? I focused on my new field, right? I had graduated with my associate's degree, engineering. So I ended up with the two. So mechanical engineering as well as math engineering. So I did both simultaneously. Anyway, and I'm thinking as I'm going through this, like, man, this is not what I want. So I decided I was going to leave. And then I came back and graduated with my bachelor's in 2017. And now I'm working on my master's, right? Master's program. And I should graduate probably fall of next year. A lot of deaf people don't do that. It's tough. But like I say, I poured my heart into it. I really looked at what I wanted to do, and have been successful. Now, 2005, I didn't graduate with my bachelor's. Trust me, it's normal. It's normal, your path. Everybody kind of goes through this. You get frustrated. You try to sort out your path. It's never too late to go back. Get your bachelor's. I did. 2005, I left NTID, went to California, got a job. West Coast Choppers, right? Building motorcycles. I became their machinist. I was working with Jesse James, right? Here's a sign name, right? Who lives here. He's about 45 minutes from here now. Oh, he's at Dripping Springs, I think. Yeah, Dripping Springs. And I used to work with him at West Coast Choppers. And, man, I fell in love with what I was learning. I had a mentor, right, who was hearing. I was the only deaf person there, right? And, you know, I wasn't the only one working there. There was another person there named Carrie, and, man, he was a ridiculously good welder. I mean, one of the best. No joke, no joke. You know, I worked there, worked with my mentor, taught me a lot, and me as a machinist, right? He could hear, and I learned to feel. And with he could hear, I could feel, and with this, I kind of really got good at it. It was really a wonderful experience for me. And, yeah, went back to work for West Coast Choppers. Love the people there. Missed my experience there. I mean, really one of the greatest stepping stones of my life. Now, these are some examples of motorcycles that I've built in Long Beach, California, back in the day. Here's a couple of pictures you see up here on the screen. Now, I used to work for a variety of companies, right? I jumped around a bit. You see the names here on the screen. And it was good to get these experiences, right? To move around a little bit. You don't have to pick one spot, one company, stay there, and that's where you're going to be. No. If you want to move around to different companies, as I have done, I mean, really, this is how I've developed my knowledge of my skills. My skill base has improved significantly from these experiences. I think of all of these different things that I've done, the different places that I've worked, and you put all that together, that's my knowledge base. I mean, it's a little bit overwhelming when I think about Orange County Choppers, and I think about the things that I've done, and they say, well, you could do that. Well, yeah, I can do all of these different things, right? I stayed motivated. I forced myself, right? I mean, really, I overcome deafness out in this hearing world, you know? And I had to prove myself every day that I could do it. And, you know, part of that was my struggle. And my struggle became less and less over time. And through that, that's part of who I am today. You'll see my past employers up here. You know, some of them are related to aerospace, right? And I tell you, it's very, very difficult, very difficult. And over the years, trying to get more deaf people to come on board and, you know, be successful. And I'm telling you guys can do it too. Now, what does computer, so CNC, computer numerical control, that's CNC. And you see up here on the screen, right, some of the things we do as a machinist. You know, you do setup, you do programming, right? So you set everything up, then you got to sit at your computer, you know, you use software, and you create the design, and then you send that information to the machine, and this is what it creates. There's some examples of it up here on the table. Design a tool room, right? I've done that. And, you know, it requires advanced skill and knowledge. And, you know, that was part of my drive. I wanted to be able to, from the bottom, work all the way up to the top. And I wanted to be able to get there. I'm telling you, really a wonderful experience for me. I got a little video here. Want to get a sense of what I'm talking about? Let's watch that. NTID, right? In sign language, right? Finger spelled NTID. You see there on the screen. Now, in my 14 years, I think of the two things that I've accomplished. Well, really, it's three. I think breaking through barriers, right? I mean, lots of barriers. Communication barriers, inability to hear, trying to prove myself, people telling me I can't, you can't. I mean, some people have told me this. No joke. I mean, I've had executives, a vice president, right, from a company come up to me and say, you will never succeed more than what you are today. I said, what? Me? No, I'm telling you. Oh, that nod at me. I said, hey, I forced myself. I am going to make some changes. Really? And I had to keep me cool, right? Work hard, stick with it. I didn't say anything. But I look back to that. I looked back to where I'm at today. I'm teaching today. I mean, that's a big accomplishment for me. That's big. You know, now I hear from other people out and about. They're saying, hey, good job. Look at you. Look at that today. You know, don't let other people pull you down. Right? Keep going. Become successful. There's a quote. Take a look here. Chase your dreams, but always know the road that will lead you home again. Right? And that's part of my life. Right? I started NTID. Ended up in California doing this and that. I end up back home at NTID, and that's my home, and I teach, right? And, you know, I graduated from the program. Now I'm teaching there. And a well-known person, my mentor, Titan Gilroy, famous quote, you know, if it's something that we all have, fight for it, right? You face different things, different issues, you know, and through all of these, I prove who I am. Hey, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for sharing that powerful journey, your childhood growing up being the only deaf person and people telling you you can't, and setting high goals for yourself and having passion to be a machinist, and then working in California and then continuing that journey on. We can all learn from your journey. So thank you again for sharing that, Mark. Now next, we have another presenter. We have Tim Kettering. He is from San Francisco, California, and he works for Lyft, software engineer.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here to chat with all of you today. One thing that I've seen mentioned a few times already is that growing up, not really having a deaf role model, you weren't seeing deaf engineers or others in the STEM field. And for me, I was in the same boat. Growing up, I would see deaf people work in the post office, maybe a printing press, or other fields like that, but I didn't see anyone in the computer science field. And so I wanted to give you some perspective on those who are in the field now. And if you have any questions later on, you want to know more, please feel free to come talk to me after this presentation. So my name is Tim. I am an iOS engineer at Lyft. This is my sign for Lyft. This is a company that provides ride shares to wherever it is that you're looking to go. I've been doing software development for almost 20 years now, and a variety of fields, which I'll expound upon later on. So I graduated from the School for the Deaf, the Minnesota State Academy for the Deaf, back in 1993. Today I'm currently working as an iOS engineer at Lyft. And so if you think about getting from point A to point B, I'll talk a little bit about that. Some of you envision that you're going to finish school and you're going to go straight into the employment field, and that's it. It's a straight line. But I'm here to tell you that that's truly not the case. It looks a lot more like this. You're going to have twists and turns, things that set you back, because you're going to be faced with different situations that you realize as a setback, or you have to back up and reassess what you're doing. So my very first job was working as a web developer at techies.com. And so my job there was to make web pages, do HTML coding. That was my very first job. So I worked there only a year or two, and then I was laid off. They said, go home. The company had gone bankrupt and would be no longer operating. So I really struggled with that for a while. I felt that I had lost my job, which means that maybe I have no value or I have no worth. And I really had to teach myself that regardless of losing a job, that I still can contribute to this field. And so at that time, I got out a book, I got online and started teaching myself how to code. Oh, actually, go back. So I ended up finding a new job. I was working for a company called FAQs, and I was developing web apps and different things for governmental agencies. But quite frankly, after a few years, I got pretty bored. It was a very monotonous job, and so I decided to leave the industry at that time. I ended up moving to California, and I was already lessening my involvement with computer-related work, so I decided to do some photography. These are a few samples of my work. I had an opportunity to travel, meet a lot of people, learn new things. I also became really interested in rock climbing at that time. And in California, there's quite a few wonderful places to climb. I met a lot of people all over the world just being invested in these hobbies. It just so happens that one day I fell from this rock right here, actually, and ended up breaking my foot. And some of you may think, well, what does this have to do with STEM? I'll get there. It really has nothing to do with STEM. But the point is that when you do something that you really love and you face a setback, sometimes these bad things do happen. That's the point in which you have to pause, back up, and consider, is this something I want to stop or something I want to continue to pursue? So in rock climbing, I recognize, yes, it is a dangerous sport to be involved in, but I decided not to quit because I felt like this is something I enjoy and I want to pursue regardless. So after a 6-month road to recovery, I continued my love of climbing. After that, I started getting back to work into coding. I developed a couple of apps for the deaf community, if you recognize a few of these. I was part of Cardzilla, a part of VL2 storytelling, and the ASL app. So these are some that you may be familiar with. So now I am where I'm at Lyft. And it has been a very long journey from web development to currently working for a huge company with 5,000 people working. We do 20 to 30 million rides that we're offering. And when I think about what I really want to drive home to all of you joining us today is that there are going to be many surprises in your life. Sometimes you think about, I want to do this, but then you become interested in something else. You decide to explore other options. And you may think, oh, you know what, this isn't a good fit for me. But go ahead and explore those opportunities out there because it may lead you to a new place to where you find yourself. You find something new, and it may apply to what you originally wanted to go for to begin with. And so, yes, frustrations do happen. You're going to meet individuals who do not believe in you. They'll believe that you can't do anything, or meet those who cast you off or don't even give you a second glance. The importance is believing in yourself and starting there. So my last statement I want to share with you is that you're going to have a lot of folks, as others have mentioned, there's going to be folks that are going to try to give you advice about things you should do. But listen to them because they really want to see you succeed. The important thing is that you believe in yourself and that you're able to determine your own journey. Because at the end, that's really all what matters, doing what you want to do. All right, thank you.
A round of applause. Thank you, Tim. What a life. It's not an A point A to point B journey, right? Different skills, different experiences. He broke his foot and he still had to navigate through all of that experience, and now working for Lyft. Thank you for that advice. You know, people advise you and encourage you, but in the end, you make your own journey. I love that quote. Thank you for sharing that, Tim. Next, another presenter we're excited about. We have Julian Moinois. He is here in Austin, Texas, and works with drones, flying drones. His company is his initials, JM. Hello, everyone. I'm Julian Moinois. And I'm really excited to be here and give a presentation on flying drones. I see some of you here. I've recognized some of you. Hi. Okay, so drones. It's a hobby that has really become quite fascinating for me. You know, it's important to introduce yourself in deaf culture, right? So I am going to start with that, talking about a story about my parents. My mother is from Germany and moved to America at the age of 3, went to school, and then in college joined the Peace Corps. And she volunteered and ended up in Sierra Leone. And she was assisting the local farmers there in working on crops and farming in that area. And then fell in love with my dad, who was a math teacher at a school there. They fell in love and moved back to North Carolina, where I was born, in Durham. And there's a university near there where I was raised. And I went to deaf school in North Carolina. I was there for a short time, and then in a mainstream program. Grew up and went to a school K through 12 that was the Durham School of Arts, DSA. And I really got involved with art, studied theater, photography. And after I graduated from there, I went to RIT, NTID, and that's where I found my identity. You know, at first I wasn't sure my major, what I would do. I took some of the required classes and went along and decided on advertising and public relations because I had interest in talking to people. I like to talk, and videography. And after I graduated, I got involved with ZVRS, a VRS company, and did some work in that industry. I was involved with their social media platform. I was the coordinator, and I was responsible for their Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the posts and communication with customers. And now today, I'm doing creative content, so videography and so forth. And you wonder how I kind of dabbled in both areas. Being a social media person, I could see people liking the likes, you know. What do people tend to like? They like videos. They like to see pictures. Script is not eye-catching, and so that fascinated me. Why are people liking the videos? And really kind of got into that and kind of perused that, and that led me to drones. And that's what I'm really excited to talk about today. What are drones? Really kind of, it's a common word that everyone knows, right? You know the word drone, but there's another word, a quadcopter. So it has the 4 propellers, and here's some more fancy words. An unmanned aerial vehicle. So there's not anyone, a pilot, on the vehicle. And then another term is an unmanned aerial system. So these are some different examples from small to large. They can be various sizes. Cameras, some just have very common cameras. Some are more advanced to fit a variety of needs. So How do drones benefit us in our society today? There's kind of 10 different examples I have here. In the past, drones were only used by the military, and now that's become more widespread. They were used for war, where a human may not be the best fit to go into that area. Construction. So somebody climbing up and doing research in a construction area, instead they will send a drone. It saves time and money to be able to take aerial footage. Search and rescue. You remember recently you saw on CNN, you've seen different newscast drones going over areas where they're surfing and you see the sharks chasing the people. That's an example of search and rescue where you can save a person who is maybe drowning or lost in the forest and retrieve that person. Agriculture. You can't really get a good view. It's a better view from an aerial footage or having to travel across a large field. Maybe plants are dying. Insurance losses, it saves time and money that is expended by using drones. This is awesome. Whales. And how do whales and drones, how are they linked? So when the whales spew water through their blowhole, there's been a lot of research on this and the health of whales. And so this is really awesome work that we're using drones to be able to do. Law enforcement, whether they be on horses or cycles, they're able to get aerial footage and bust people. Also, they've done sports coverage with different types of drones. They've tried to use helicopters in the past, and it was very expensive to fuel helicopters, and drones are much cheaper. Amazon, delivering all your packages in vehicles. They're testing this. This is a new concept where a drone is going to drop the package at your door. Trying to sell a house. You need pictures, right? You need videos to be able to showcase the home. Drones are gathering that information, and we're seeing a huge benefit in that area. So there's also recreational drones for personal use. Maybe you have one yourself. And I'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. Because I'm certified, I do feel obligated to kind of warn you and make you knowledgeable. Yes, drones are really cool, but at the same time, there's an importance for being safe and being responsible. So these are the rules. I'm going to keep it simple. I don't want to overwhelm you. Drones can't be over 55 pounds. They must stay within your, they call it the line of sight. So it needs to be visible to you. It can't go past your line of sight. So keep it close. Third rule, the footage, it has to stay within 400 feet. It can't go higher than that. If you're near an airport, you're not allowed to operate a drone within 5 miles. So it has to be 5 miles away. And the result could be a hefty fine. And you're really not going to be able to pay that amount, so you don't want to have that happen. And if you're in an area that's very crowded, like a sporting event or so forth, you're not supposed to fly a drone in a crowded area. So it needs to be in an area where there's less people. And that can be dangerous because drones could fall on somebody and it could be dangerous. So just remember the person that is standing and watching is the visual observer, and they are watching to make sure that it's safe, and they'll share and communicate with you at all times safety information. If you're looking down at a controller and then trying to look up, you might miss something, so it's best to have an observer. Okay, and I must emphasize, when you get a drone, please read the instruction manual. This is important. You know, you get a drone and you want to go out and fly it right away. And this is an example of a pilot. If they flew and they were trying to read the manual at the same time, would you want to be sitting in the back seat with him? So you need to plan in advance before you fly a drone. There's some apps to help you prepare for flight before you fly. It's from the AA. They have FAA. They have where it's safe to fly and where it's not safe to fly. They have information. There's requirements for safety information and recommendations. The next app is AirMap, similar concept. I like to make sure I don't want to rely on one app for information, so I use the two apps and have backup so that I feel comfortable that I have followed all safety regulations. Also, there's a weather app, UAV Forecast. It'll tell you about rain. There's lots of other information too. You see in green, there's that bar that says good to fly. It'll turn red when it's unsafe. So that you can prepare in advance, you know, is that a good day to fly? Or maybe I need to say, let's do a weather delay. From my experience, it's very helpful to be prepared. I would like to show you some of my work and things that I've done with drones. I like to film in different areas. So maybe you'd be interested in science, construction. Everyone has their own interests, so I'd like to show you kind of a 1-minute video. I'm sorry I didn't bring popcorn, but just give you an idea of some of the things I've done.
Come on now.
Enjoy the show. I enjoyed that video and showing that. I want to go back to my license. It's called a Part 107. And maybe you might be interested in considering that. And what is the Part 107 for? That allows me to fly for commercial purposes. So that's paid jobs that require licensure. So recreational is different. I have to have a license to prove my knowledge in aerospace. So that includes being considerate of weather, motorizing a drone, and having those concepts is proven through getting a license. So you have to be 16 or older to apply. You have to be able to read English and understand English. There's mental and physical requirements for flying drones and making sure that you can be safe. I got my license back in 2017, and that license came out in 2016, and then over 100,000 people got that license since. And so some of you already are 16, maybe not yet, but close. Maybe go ahead and start early. I'd like to see more deaf pilots out there in the future. And you can see more of my work if you're interested. I have my website here. And something that I'm currently working on is a reel. My trips this year, also, I recently went to a big celebration and had an opportunity to fly my drone there. I went to Egypt, and I have videos and photo there that I took with the drone. So enjoy. Wow, cool, right? Drones, awesome. Well, I'm really interested in how you can apply drones to agriculture, construction, recreational use. I didn't realize the big impact drones have in our daily lives. And then Julian encouraging us to get our license. I think it's a good opportunity to be able to make money and see more deaf people in that a career opportunity. So we might have some people out there who are interested. Awesome. Thank you for sharing about your career. We learned a lot about drones today. Okay, our last but not least presenter. We have Carrie Nestler, and she is from Denver. She's involved with Art Integer Group, and I look forward to seeing your presentation.
Hi guys. So I am Carrie Nestler, and ironically, we're talking about computers, but I have my old school notes here. So, can you guys hear me? Okay, is everything great? Okay. So let's get started. I'm Carrie Nestler. I'm an art director, and I like to call myself a maker because I make things pretty, I make things interesting, and this PowerPoint isn't super interesting, but we'll go with that. So a little bit about me. I'm from Colorado, and I was born deaf, and I have a hearing family, and I was born oral, so I didn't know sign language until I went to RIT. And the only reason I'm not signing right now is just because I'm nervous, and I want you guys all to understand me very well. So here we have our interpreter here. And so RIT was my first experience with the deaf community. I had all hearing friends, all hearing classes, and let's see here. I had hearing aids, and I just also didn't really have an interest in being part of the deaf community because I wasn't exposed to it. So when I decided to go to college, I got into RIT, that was a huge culture shock for me because I didn't understand anyone. I was surrounded by everyone signing, and I was just overwhelmed by all the amount of support that you guys have here at RIT and a lot of deaf schools with the interpreters, with the C-print, with just the amount of support that you guys have. I've never had that before. And so when I started, joining clubs, I was on the dance team, I joined a sorority, I started to learn sign language. And then RIT really changed my life in more ways than one. So yes, I was a part of the deaf community now, but also it really laid out the foundation for my career. I was, not yet. Not yet. So I didn't have a computer much growing up, and so this was my first time being around a computer quite as much. And I only used it for like essays or research, but now, when I joined the school, I went there for photography. But what I learned in high school was film photography. And they weren't doing that anymore. They were doing digital photography. And I had no experience with that. And so that first year was really hard for me. And honestly, I failed at that because college life caught up to me, and I really struggled. And so I took that summer and I thought about it some more, and I decided to switch to graphic design. And that's where, I learned one skill after another: Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, Bridge, Flash. I did a little bit of coding. I was terrible at that, so I didn't go down that route. But I took classes in branding and advertising and web design, and so yeah. And then what's next? Let's go to the next page. All right. And so then now, I graduated, and I was still trying to figure out exactly what I was going to do. I started working at a social media company, and this was a very small agency. It was all hearing, and this is when social media really started to take off, and I started to learn a lot about how businesses really use social media as a platform for their business, and that's how they reached out to their customers and made a connection with that customer. And so I assisted with logo development and design, photography, branding, and we were setting up an online platform for these small businesses. However, it was a very small agency. They didn't understand a lot about, it was all men. They didn't understand me being deaf, and so I wasn't successful there. And so I ended up leaving that company, and I needed a new change. I needed something different, so I moved to Chicago. I didn't have a job yet, and made my parents very nervous. But I wanted to do something new. I needed to be uncomfortable. And so I started working for an agency called McNanny Continuum Marketing. And they work for Marriott hotels, insurance companies. They work for Mars Wrigley, which is the candy and the gum company. And I designed all the print collateral and the digital banners, the websites, and so it was just across many mediums. I started as an intern there, and then I worked my way up to be a junior art director there. And after working there for, I want to say, a year and a half or so, I got fired or laid off. Whatever I don't know. I didn't get a warning. They didn't let me know that I wasn't doing well. It was just out of the blue. And you can go to the next slide. And this was some of the things that I was doing. This was one of my favorite campaigns for Wrigley, and they were having the company at the time was struggling with their safety policy. They actually had a couple deaths in their factory, and they needed a new campaign to generate awareness about safety, but also stay on brand. They're not going to show pictures of, people, photography of people just like struggling. They're going to show their brand. And so we used the candy that they make and incorporated that into just little messages for them to promote safety. And I was one of the main directors on this. And so after, while I'm doing this and I'm on this high, I'm feeling great, and then I get fired, it was just out of the blue. So it was a real hit for me, because and honestly, a lot of people get fired once in their life. And so it honestly became one of the best experiences for me, because I learned so much from that and I grew from that. So, next. Go ahead. All right. So then, from there, I decided, after I lost that job, I decided I wanted to try something new. And so I got a cochlear implant, which was life-changing for me. And because I had hearing aids, and I was lip reading, I had my deaf community, I also had my hearing community, but I was always kind of stuck in the middle. And getting the cochlear implant, which is an experience that I don't feel like people talk about enough. They don't understand that your brain is now trying to adjust to this natural sound and trying to connect it to the digital sound. And it's an experience that's like no other. And it was exhausting, and music changed for me, the way people were talking changed for me, and it's ironic, but I felt more a part of the deaf community once I got my implant. And because I relied more on signing in some ways, but then I would just take it off, then I would go and join the hearing world. So it was a big change for me. And so then when I decided to move back to Denver, and I started freelancing for the Integer Group. And this is basically, the Integer Group they do shoppers marketing. So they work for Starbucks. We do work for Mars Wrigley, which is a similar client that I had before. And they've done work for Pepsi, for Miller Lite. They have a lot of big companies. And the team that I'm on is Red Robin. So what I do now is the account director will come and bring us a job, and they will talk to us about what are the objectives, what's the timing, what do they want to, what's the audience, and what are the specific asks. And so I focus a lot on menus. We do all the print material, so we do all the menus, we do all the digital material, we do all of the social media, and the creative team will come together and we'll brainstorm, we'll discuss, we'll sketch. This is when we actually move away from the computer a little bit, and we get back to notes and Post-its, and because we're so focused on the computer, it's nice to get away and go out and get inspired. And then we'll get together and we'll talk about it. What are we coming up with? And then afterwards, then we go and present. And this is now as an AD, I was always behind the scenes. I was always the designer, I was always in the office, and now I go and present to the client. So, and that's a new thing for me, because I am not a presenter. And so I like to lead, I like to direct, I like to concept, but going and presenting to the client is a whole nother ballgame. So I'm practicing on you guys right now. And so yeah, then the next slide. So yeah, we use Slack, which is a program for real-time interactions between the employees. We use like Google Docs. We use everything. Everything is interacting through the computer. We have illustration tablets where instead of drawing on paper, then we're drawing on this tablet and it goes straight into the computer. And then of course we use Photoshop, photo editing, InDesign, illustration, Bridge, and Dreamweaver. Go ahead. So this is an example. It's not really showing up too well. So this is an example of the kids menu, which we have been nominated for an award for, and this is kind of the process of the kids menu, and we basically wanted to come up with something where kids aren't just playing tic-tac-toe for 3 seconds. Tic-tac-toe, the parents need the kids to be distracted so that they can order the food. And so we decided to come up with, you can go to the next one, an idea that not only it's kind of like a Where's Waldo concept, but also interaction at the table. We came up with a concept that has, interaction with the parents. They can read questions and play with the parents, play with the waiters, and it's an idea of something that shows more interaction than just tic-tac-toe or hangman. And then that's the other side where we have, and it's just showing all the photography that we go through, they go through so much strategizing of what they put on the menu. You know, you go to a menu, you're not really thinking about it. You're seeing burgers, fries, how exciting. But it goes down to how they build the burger, how they display the burgers, how they prioritize the burgers. And I mean, I literally talk about food all day long. I look at food all day long. So it's a very hungry job. Next. And this was exciting. So this year is their 50th anniversary, and I was fortunate enough to got picked to design the 50th logo. This truck specifically, they made a food truck, and I designed the truck, and it traveled all over the country and went to different Red Robins. And so it was, for someone in the past who hasn't had a lot of her work out in the public, this was going all over the country and displaying my work. So that was very exciting for me. Go ahead. And this is our current campaign, which now we've been challenged to bring out more of the personality in Red Robin. We like to show the fun side of Red Robin. There's so much competition in the restaurant business because there's, we have Chili's, we have Applebee's, and everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone wants to have bottomless fries. Everyone wants to come up with new burgers, and so there's so much competition. We have to stand out, and that's always the challenge as a designer, that we have to stand out. And so for social, I love doing social. I think it's where, with the menus, we have a lot of rules. We have to follow, exactly what the engineer of the menu. But with social, we can have more fun. And so I've taught myself lettering, and so all the lettering on there is mine. And I mean, we've taken the sauce that goes on the burger, and I did that. I designed that with the lettering. And now, yeah, go ahead. And I'm involved in the photo shoots, and so I've learned food styling, and then I learned food editing, and so then once I get the photographs from the photographer, then I'm analyzing this image of a burger, and I'm deciding, okay, I want this tomato to be more red. I want this lettuce to look more green. The color is terrible here, so it doesn't look that great, but it's so much fun to be in those photo shoots because we're building things, and then we take it to the computer and we edit it. Oh yeah, there's little animations, and that's big with social media. We anything that's animated, if it's a GIF or a video, that's going to get people's attention more, and so we're always trying to stand out and get the attention of our customers. So technology just continues to emerge. It's everywhere now. It's our computers. It's on our phones. It's on social media. It's in our ears. It's constantly changing. And use it. I want you to use it for access. And just learn from it, because you want to really take the opportunity to just embrace this change and use it to your advantage for your future. And the biggest thing that I honestly want you to take away from me, and it's very similar to what everyone has been saying, is to advocate for yourself. Every single person here has failed. Someone's been fired. People have been told they can't do things. And that's the biggest thing, that you're going to go through that. Right now, you may not see it. Right now, you think, oh, I'll be fine. I got my dreams. You have the support here. But this is not in the real world. And you have to fight for it. You have to ask for it. You're not going to get what you want unless you ask for it and you fight for it. So, yeah, and then if you do that, you're going to have fun with whatever you do. So, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Now I want to eat at Red Robin, get a burger. I'm hungry, right? Do you guys want to go eat at Red Robin? After all that advertising, isn't it cool to see her journey? And obviously, she faced some frustrations, including frustrations with communication and access. And, it wasn't a smooth journey and through her different careers. But now she's happy, she's successful, and she's developing for a big client, Red Robin, and others. So being able to use creativity with photography and social media and use of technology, that is her journey, and I hope it has had an impact on you like it has on me. Okay, so we had the 5 presenters. I hope you learned a lot. I do have a question for the panel, so I will ask them, and then they can take turns answering. So we've kind of run out of time, so it's probably going to be about one question, so maybe 2 minutes, 90 seconds. 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Use your internal clock and sign fast. So the theme today is computers. So I'd like you to explain your use of computers in your work, and in what ways do you use computers? And we'll start with you, Joe.
The question, how do I use computers in my work, right? Now, again, I'm a firmware engineer, and I'm responsible for developing code for different things. We use like batteries, and we will test different things online, right? We will chat with managers, we'll talk with peers, and I'll do research, and through my work, I find different things. A lot of it involves computers. It's not just for work, but also in my personal life, right? I have side projects that I'm working on. I'm using computers to do research, to order parts, and a whole variety of things. And I balance both, right? I use computers in my personal life, and I certainly use them in my work life as well. Now, using computers, well, as a machinist, it's a machine and it's a computer. I'm using the screen. I use the screen to communicate with the machine. It's me using coding with the computer. I use the screen, as I say, on the machine. I use software. Let's see, I use Maker, Cam, a variety of different things. I use SlideWorks, AutoCAD, as I say, various software. I use Word, I use Notepad, Excel. I get to do all my setup before I put the information over to the computer. I check everything, make sure everything's lined up, make sure it's all set really right, before I send it to the computer, because if you don't, you'll have a problem with the computer, it'll crash and this and that. When you're trying to make a product. But computers, it's a big part of the machinist world.
Typically, my computer use at work is all day long because I get to work until the moment I leave. I have my laptop at all times. I use my computer for chatting with coworkers because there are interpreters provided throughout the day. However, sometimes we have side conversations, whether it be via IM or direct message with some of my coworkers regarding a variety of items. I also use the computer for maybe folks ask me to do some specific projects or work, so it could be setting up something on Google or looking online to find specific resources, and then I'm able to apply that to whatever work I may be doing at that point. I also develop apps for phones, so usually what I'll do is I will create the code on the computer, and then I will also configure it to the app, and I will send that over to my phone for testing to ensure that there are no glitches within the code, and then I can go back to the computer to make any revisions as necessary. And so that's pretty much, I'm on the computer all day long for me.
Next person.
Well, how do computers apply to work with drones? It's kind of split up into different processes, before, during, and then after. So before I fly, I need to do some research that I do on the computer, the location, making sure that it's safe, checking the weather, also maintenance, making sure that my drone is updated. If it's not, I need to plug it in to the computer, and then I need to look at the calibrations and make adjustments, make sure that it's balanced and ready to fly. And then during the flight, I'm using an iPad with an app, before to go, and then I'm looking at the iPad screen and I'm looking at pictures that I might want to take, and then looking at the Adobe Premiere Pro and using that to edit videos. And then photos, I use Photoshop, or I might use Lightroom processing to do my printing.
With computers, so we also use the computer all day long from start to finish. So it would start with, just conceptualizing, coming up with new ideas, researching what the job is, and then we would design it on the computer with InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator. But it's also kind of a hub where all the different people in this job come together. So if the photographer gives me the images, then I then view it into the computer. I make my edits in the computer, and I send it back to him, and then he goes back and fixes it on his computer, and it comes back to me again. It goes with like my freelancers or my illustrators or my other designers. They will do their work on their computer. It will come to me. I edit it. I make sure that it is meeting all the requirements, and we make any changes or updates necessary, and then it will go back to them. And so it's also where we all communicate and where we build the work from start to finish.
Do we have time for one more? Okay, I can see that computers are key. They're used for everything. Okay, we do have one more question we can ask. So I'll ask each of you, where do you see yourself in terms of the STEM field within the next 5 to 10 years? And what's the road to get there? What impact will it have on the deaf community or on the world in your career with STEM?
Really, I think for STEM, at least in the last 5 years, the development has been incredibly fast. So I imagine in the next 5 years, anything is possible. My master's project focused on AI, artificial intelligence. And so I think it'd be really cool. So back in the 1990s, there were quite a few individuals involving in research trying to convert ASL to text. And today, that continues to be a challenge. I find myself challenged by my project itself. So I'm hoping to see in the next 5 years to see AI be more competent with the ability to do some of that translation between ASL and text for it to actually become a reality. I think that would be a huge impact on the deaf community. And looking at the world at large, we do have a heavy emphasis on STEM right now. I think at the end of the day, anything is possible with technology in the next 5 years. Thank you.
STEM has a lot to do with manufacturing, CNC, machining. Let me try to explain this as clear as possible. STEM, S, right, science. T, technology. There's a lot of related to technology and manufacturing in general. Science, look at the relationship between that and technology. Science and technology go together. E, engineering. Engineering helps to support the technology and the science and math. Math has a big impact on manufacturing, right? There's needs. M relates to the E, relates to the T, relates to the S. And that's how you get the STEM. Think about the next 5 years. I mean, this is just getting bigger and bigger. Kind of like what they were recently saying. Think about, what was it, 8 million? 8 million? Oh, 8 million jobs in demand. I mean, think about that. A huge demand. I mean, we're looking for people with skills. I mean, who wants to work in the field? And I mean, you're just going to see this take off. I mean, baby boomers back in the day. I mean, those guys that have retired now. You think about the group of people that used to work. That the pool has shrunk. And now I just think this is a good field for y'all as well as deaf people. I mean, think about the deaf community. Think about deaf people that own businesses. I think it's wonderful. It doesn't mean you have to be able to hear to be a part of all of this. Anybody can do this. You know, same thing, going to NTID, learning different things, working anywhere in the world. You think about technology, boys and girls, and, you know, all of the different opportunities. You think about the things that you want to do. You don't have to be a machinist. You don't have to be in manufacturing. You know, you got like these other four up here on the stage have talked about. They have their own fields. I mean, really, any of y'all can do it. Don't be afraid to step up. Get out of your comfort zone. Run with it.
I think honestly, I would tell you that the next 5 to 10 years is going to be a lot of changes in the area of STEM. I think, as mentioned, artificial intelligence. We're going to have computers are becoming more like an assistant to people. They're going to be able to have more capabilities. And I think that's a good opportunity for you as well. Because with AI and other technology of the like, it's going to allow you to do your work better. And in the future, that might be who's interpreting for you. I'm not saying that we'll replace interpreters, but they may be able to do that type of work. And as mentioned, there's so many new jobs available, and they're high paying and high satisfaction jobs. And so it's important to find your happiness in a good place in life. And so where we're going to be in 10 years, it's of course unpredictable, but be ready to jump on those opportunities and to roll with it.
Five or 10 years from now, wow. It's exciting, a little scary to think about what the future could bring, but really, no, don't be scared. Go with the changes. I think for every idea or product or cycle that we go through, in terms of drones, you know, what it's going to look like. Drones, before they took off, and thinking about what we would use them for, and rules related to aero traffic, and really they're assigning more rules for delivery, for sports use, and we're kind of learning as we go with it, what that's going to look like in the future.
Just to add on what everyone else has been saying, I think one of the most important things, because there's so much change can happen in 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years ago, was drones even existing yet? I don't even know. So think of how much change can happen in that amount of time. And so the most important thing is to keep learning. I know even though all of us have graduated college, we are still learning. We are still taking online classes or meeting with our mentors. And so the biggest thing is just to continue teaching yourself what is the trending and what is technology at that time.
So we have time for one more question. So one more question for you. What challenges or hurdles have you overcome that may have gotten in the way of your path that you had to overcome? You can mention one hurdle, each of you.
I think probably my biggest hurdle I faced was within my college experience. The computer engineering program at that time, I was the lone deaf person. A few years down the road, there were other deaf individuals that joined, but at that time, my teams would come up with their plans last minute, so I oftentimes wouldn't have an interpreter available, which was quite frustrating. I recognized there were some things I couldn't overcome just simply because they were out of my control. And so once mobile apps came into place, having that concept there allowed for students to be able to make requests at last minute for interpreters and be able to access. There are times in which interpreters maybe are booked and ready to go, but others are maybe a last minute back out of a student, so interpreters are suddenly available. So having that mobile app allowed us to contact an interpreter directly and be able to meet in the conference room whatever the last minute needs were. If I could, one more challenge. This is actually something I faced just a few weeks ago in my current position. I sat down with my supervisor and I mentioned that I wanted to increase my physical visibility because oftentimes I work remotely from home, and that is one nice thing is because I'm able to do that. However, many people in the office don't know me. So I asked my supervisor, how can I increase my visibility within the office? And that is a challenge because I am one of the only deaf people working there, and I have hearing coworkers. And so sitting in the office, I may find myself alone. They're able to converse, have coffees, have water cooler chats. And so one possible solution is to do some ASL instruction in my workplace. Thank you.
That's cool. Interpreters, ASL. Interesting.
I have, well, I'm thinking about a lot of barriers that I've overcome, but one, when I was a machinist, I was thinking about working in the environment with all hearing people, finding my place, figuring out where I stood, you know what I mean by where I stand, right? My worth, what I contribute to the company. I got to figure out how to be able to approach people on the same level, right, within the workplace. I think about they're able to hear and the lack of communication that happens, but how to be able to show that I can do it. And to be able to do it myself, right? I needed to show that. I showed Jesse, I showed others, but I needed to continue to be able to do that. Your time will come. It did for me, right? It was 7 years, right? It was a long road to be able to prove to people that I could do it. And, and I developed a reputation thereafter. You know what I mean? And it became better. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't so much that I was a deaf person. It's these other things that became who I am, right? As a machinist. I'm not really necessarily labeled as a deaf person. I've had wonderful opportunities, employed different places, and I look at my list and where I've worked and how I've moved up through the ranks. Started at the bottom, moved up through the ranks, become a supervisor, become the lead man. That's moving up through the ranks in the tool room. Become a programmer, too. I'm just saying. Now I'm staff, teaching programming. Don't limit yourself. The sky's the limit. There is no limit. Be honest with yourselves. Really, that's all I can say.
Really, in the STEM field, there's quite a few different challenges, but one in particular that I have faced, and that's been learning how to write code. You may see it in movies or those who type code, and it looks very strange. And when I first started, that's what it looked like to me. It was a foreign language. I didn't understand it. It made no sense to me. Some of the concepts and whatnot I was completely daunted by. And so I ended up giving up at one point. And then later I came back to it, started studying, tried again, And through my struggles, I began to understand more clearly. And it took time. I knew that I would have to take breaks and come back to it. And that's okay. That's part of that journey. And that's just an example of many things that you may go through in life. Sometimes you'll face challenges you may not understand, and it's easy to give up and step away from it. But that's okay. Take a break and come back to it. Try again. The important thing is to try again until you finally gain that understanding of what you're looking for. And so it requires a little bit of patience. That's all.
Challenges through the years. Often it had to do with my identity. Growing up, biracial, my mother was white, my dad was black, trying to navigate that, feeling like I was too light to be involved in the group with the black kids or too dark to be in the group with the white kids, and feeling like I had to change in my story to be positively looked at in both of those groups. And trying to navigate through that. Excuse me, I lost my train of thought, but challenges. Don't let people tell you you can't do that. Your opinion is worthy. And that's what I had to keep in my mind as I went through a lot of things. A lion is not concerned about the opinions of a sheep. So the opinions of other people, it's important that you remember what's important to yourself, not worry about others' opinions. Thank you.
One of my hurdles is actually not just with being deaf in this world, but also being a woman. And I work on an all-male team, an all-male creative team. And so coming into a male-dominated room where all these men have been in this field for maybe 10 plus years, and they all have their opinions, they all have their ideas and something to say, and they will talk over you. They will come in there pretty strong, and it's very intimidating as a woman. And so coming in there, I almost have to be a little more aggressive than I usually want to be, because I need to make sure that I'm being heard, that my ideas are being heard. And so my team knows I'm a pretty sassy person. So I come in there pretty aggressive, and but that's how I get things done. That's how I make sure that they know that I'm in the room too, and it's not just all about the men. So yeah, that's it.
So you have to be assertive. Awesome. Well, that is a wealth of experience we have here. Skill, expertise, drive, motivation. These people have high goals for themselves, and they have really worked to a high level, whether it be at NTID, Texas Instruments, working with drones, marketing groups, high-level jobs, and not an easy journey, but they made it. And I think it benefits us all to learn from them and consider working in the STEM field. Who now wants to have a future like them in the STEM field? Show of hands. Still about half the room. I think there's an increase, a few more hands than we saw in the beginning. Well, I do want to make sure to recognize and thank the people who made this event happen today. So thanks to our panelists. I'm really happy and really appreciate your time. Thank you. I do also want to thank our interpreters up here on the front row. Thank you to the interpreters. I also want to thank CART. They're remote. They're not able to be seen in the room, but there is someone who has been providing the CART services that you see up on the screen here. Also, the ERCOD team, David Coco and his team, many thanks to you. We have Willie here, who has orchestrated this event today. Also, thank you to TSD and the studio, the lighting, the people up in the booth up there handling the sound and so forth. Thank you. Stage managers, big thanks to you guys. And we also have Texas School for the Deaf, where we are at today, and the students and the teachers who have come to view this presentation. Thank you all.
Okay, hi everyone. We're now ready to move on to lunch. I do want to explain a few housekeeping things before we go over there. We'll be going over to one of the TSD gyms that I mentioned earlier. You will have 5 choices, as you can see here listed. Keep in mind these are boxed lunches, so you will see that